and then you kind of weed your way down all the way to the final two. Well, when I was 9 years old, it was 2009. I'm going to age a lot of you there. In 2009, I was in the second grade, and I distinctly remember one contestant going all the way to the finals from Conway, Arkansas, and his name was Chris Allen. You may remember him. And so that was a really neat thing. Arkansas got publicity, Toad Suck Days in Conway got publicity and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember it was a big deal on who you supported. Did you really support, I think it was Adam Levine or whoever his name was, but then you had Chris Allen, and that was a big deal. So I remember it was a big deal when we were at church. I mean, among us second graders, I guess. I mean, it was a big deal. It was really a big deal at school. I mean, we were talking about it all the time. It was just on our minds all the time. You went down the street and you saw all these signs put out in the road or on the side of the sidewalk, and it's like, vote Chris Allen, American Idol. Vote Chris Allen, American Idol. You saw a little bit of Adam, the other guy, but really it was just like, and that's kind of all we were consumed with. And every time American Idol was on, it seemed like the entire city of Conway, which is running probably between 60 and 80,000, somewhere in there in population, like everyone was tuning in to watch that. I mean, it's what we talked about. It's like when a small town in Arkansas or a small town in rural America gets on the headlines because of some tragedy or something. And it's like, oh man, that's our town. That's us. We're on the news. We're on, the big national things. So it was just really intriguing. It really captivated the entire city. And it's just interesting to me. And we were, tuned in. We were glued. I mean, we were talking about it in between services at church. We were talking about it in between class and everything. Everyone had their shirts on. I remember they were green, and they had the American Idol logo in the middle, and it had his name on it and all that kind of stuff. It was just it was a really interesting experience. At the same time, though, I do think to some degree, at some point, some of us fell to an American Idol. Do you get it? Does that make sense? We had propped this guy up because after he won the whole thing, it was great. Confetti rained down, and that was incredible that he won it. He got all these different things, and then afterward, we just kind of went back to our normal life. And now you kind of have this void that you need to fill with something else. And it just kind of comes to mind that, man, sometimes we're calling it American Idol. And here we are propping it up as an idol sometimes, right? Friedrich, I don't know, Nietzsche, I think that's how you say his last name. I don't know that we'd agree with everything that he says, but there is something that we need to take note of. He says, there are more idols in the world than there are realities. Tim Keller, a contemporary preacher today, well, he just passed away recently, but Tim Keller says that the human heart is an idol factory. You think about that, an idol factory. Ever since the fall of man, our hearts have turned into idol machines and are constantly trying to manufacture a new idol to satisfy ourselves. There are conveyor belts in your heart just waiting for something to fall on them so they can try to form an idol out of creation instead of worshiping the Creator. Our hearts are idol factories. And so how do you know what something is an idol? Well, Tim Keller also says this. I think it's one of the best spot-on definitions you can come up with. An idol is something that is more important to you than God. It's anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. It could be anything that you seek to give you what only God can give to you. So, run through that again. It's more important to you than anything else. It can absorb your heart and imagination more than God, and it's something that you look to give to you, a benefit or something, what only God can truly give to you. It's kind of a lot to take in. But you become absorbed with it, and it becomes almost like your obsession. You're almost obsessed with this. And if you were to give it up for a time, you would feel some withdrawals. That may be a better way of indicating that. I don't know what that says about me and coffee, but let me illustrate this with Romans 1. Paul says this. He says, therefore, of course, in the context of people in the Roman world, in the pagan world, who are giving themselves up and they're dishonoring their bodies and everything, because they exchange the truth about God. They have the truth about God, but they exchange it for a lie, and they worship and serve the creation. They serve created things. They honor and glorify created things as opposed to the actual Creator himself. And so what we do when we make something an idol is we take what God has created and we put it into godlike status. And so God almost takes, like it's been said before, God almost takes kind of a backseat approach, and we put this thing on the forefront in the passenger seat or in the driver's seat, right? But it's this exchange. We're taking the truth about God, the praise that he deserves, the glory that he has, the holiness that he exuberates. We exchange him for something else. So I want to get into what Scripture says about idolatry, and it's probably most famously what we need to look at is Exodus chapter 32. So if you turn in your Bibles to Exodus 32, and be ready to discuss, because I've got some questions about this passage. We're not going to read the whole thing, but we will read a good portion of it. Exodus 32. Just so everyone can hear, I'll go ahead and read it. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, remember Moses has gone up on the mountain, Mount Sinai, and he is interacting with God, and the Lord's giving him the law, right? God has delivered Israel out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, destroyed the Egyptians. They've had their baptism moment, right? Been delivered, the Israelites saw it, and they've been brought out, and now they're establishing the covenant, post-baptism for the Israelites. And so Moses has gone up on the Mount Sinai, God's doing the 10 Commandments and all the rest of the law, and the people are at the foot of the mountain. They're not supposed to touch the foot of the mountain. Remember that. So when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron, Moses' assistant, and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Well, take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." They even had piercings back then. That's weird. So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears, and they brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." And when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Now look at verse 7 here. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt." Notice how God puts it almost on Moses here. "Moses, you need to go down. The people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them in order that I may make a great nation of you.' But Moses implored the Lord his God and said," kind of like Abraham, "O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians look back at this and say, 'With evil intent did he bring them out, to kill them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your burning anger and relent from this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham and Isaac and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self, and said to them, I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I've promised I will give to your offspring, and they shall inherit it forever.' And the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people." We don't really have to necessarily go much further. Quite a bit of reading. I'm sure there's some more insights that some of you may read and continue on, but what stands out to you in this passage? how quickly they wanted to make an idol.
And then they gave the idols credit for bringing them out of Egypt.
Yeah. So you see where it's like you're looking for something to give you what only God can give to you. It's like you're giving credit to a created thing when God's the one that's rescued you and redeemed you from all the oppression and all the Egyptian all the Egyptian oppression, right? In their context.
But then Aaron being the main one.
And yeah, Aaron's the chief guy that's like, well, just bring me some gold and we'll make a golden calf. I wonder how much he kept under the table. I wonder if he did. Now, I do think this is interesting. Look at verse 5. Aaron, as we were reading, this stood out to me. Aaron made a proclamation and said, with the command of the golden calf, he says, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. What? How are you going to honor God with this golden calf which you're claiming brought you out of Egypt? I mean, it's like they're trying to mix that. Like let's just mix idolatry and worship of the one true God, and it doesn't mix. It doesn't make sense, right?
You know, it's funny how they turn from God so quick after what He's done. Why would kill them when it was that?
Yeah, very quickly. Yep. And we're not exactly sure. I mean, you do go back and Moses is getting this law from the Lord all the way back in Exodus 20. So from chapter 20 all the way to chapter 32, there's a lot of things that Moses is writing down. His hand's probably cramping a little bit. So it is taking a little bit of time. At the same time, though, that is pretty quickly, as it's been brought up in multiple times. Very quickly, Israelites turn from, they turn towards a golden calf pretty quickly. We'll just say that. Anything else?
It's a great example of peer pressure.
Okay, a great example of peer pressure. In what way?
Well, assuming not everyone said, okay, God has brought us out of Egypt. There's had to be somebody that started it, and then everybody else agreed. And then Aaron was trying to play on both sides. So it's like, yeah, I'll do this because you want me to, but we still should praise God. But like you say, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's hard to mix those. So Aaron's kind of trying to play both sides, possibly. Man, it's intriguing because it's a clear reflection of us today. But so what prompted Israel to fall into idolatry? Jimmy?
Unbelief.
Yeah, unbelief. Okay, I can see some unbelief in there. May not be the full thing, but yeah.
They wanted something visual, physically they could see and touch.
Okay. Maybe they were visually stimulated just like we are today. Huh.
I think a lot of times they put their hope in Moses instead of in God. And when Moses went up on the mountain, they lost their leader.
Yeah. So when leadership leaves for a time, it's almost kind of like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Where's the clarity? Where's the direction?
It's kind of like the children walk out of the room and get into it. See you, they have guidance and
Yeah. So Fran said it's like children. When you as the parent leave the room, you don't know what kind of mischief they're going to get into. Does anyone want to share a funny mischief story? No? Too many to tell. And there's probably a confidentiality clause or something around. Yeah. But seriously though, like what caused them to fall into idolatry? There is maybe a desire for image, or maybe leadership has left for a time. The parents left the room. Unbelief has set in a little bit.
They want cabinet. They want to see a guy they can see. Who a guy they can see.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they wanted a God they could see visibly and physically.
If you go back where they came from,
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't necessarily thinking of that, but that is a great point, because how long has been before God delivered Israel out of Egypt through the Red Sea? How long had they been enslaved?
I think it's somewhere close to a year.
A year?
400.
Try 400.
Oh, I was thinking at the time this happened,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think it's about a year, and they've already got all the laws, or a lot of the laws. They've already got the word to build the tabernacle, the word to establish the priest, and all these things have been put in. And now here, as they heard all this, now,
But to Rusty's point, just acknowledging, I mean, this has been ingrained in you for 400 years. I mean, the United States of America is not even 300 years old, right? And we have this in our culture. I think when you're born into this nation, you have this almost kind of, and I don't know that it's necessarily something you're born with, but when you're born on this soil and you live in this country, you tend to generally fall into this idea of like this really stiff-necked independence. I mean, we love to beat our chest and say we're back-to-back World War champions, and we will wear that on a shirt. We'll do all these kind of American flag things, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying, though, is that when you are ingrained in a culture for so long, you almost become like the culture. It's really hard to stand out in it sometimes. It's easier to conform to the culture than it is to stand out. That's why it is challenging sometimes to be salt and light in a dark and bland world. But anyways, so Israel's been in Egypt for 400 years. They've been raised this way. Their mom and dad were raised this way. Their grandparents were raised this way. Maybe their great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. This is what they've been taught. This is how they've grown up. This is what they've been immersed into. And now all of a sudden you take them out of this environment with a long lineage of 400 years, and then you put them into they don't know where to go or what to do. Moses is left. Well, what do? There's a void, right? There's a void. I think this is interesting. Chapter 32, verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. We don't know what's become of him." Again, this is before social media. If Moses had social media, I wonder if he actually would have posted, selfie on top of Mount Sinai, right? I mean, way before all that. There's no communication on the telephone. They possibly went to idolatry because they were impatient. We don't know what's come of Moses. Don't know how long this has transpired. But they got impatient. And they started having voids, and they started trying to fill these voids with all these other things. And they even want to create something and build something and manufacture something to fill those voids. Beloved, I think that it's just as prevalent for us today. I mean, if we're impatient, how long can you sit without actually going on social media? Fran? Yep.
Is this really any different? I know we read that and we say, well, how could they do that? But is it really any different than us now? We are Christians and we fall upon hard times or problems or we're scared or whatever. And sometimes we remove ourselves from God and just because of any circumstance, temporary, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's just sin, and that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. No, we're no different. Oh, I agree. We're no different.
They got bored.
Yeah.
They wasn't up wandering around in the wilderness no more, and just sitting there and they got bored.
A lot of things happen when you get bored. Down. Okay, so there's this unhealthy maybe level of boredom in our life. And and we get impatient, so we go to TikTok, or we go to Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and then all of a sudden we start, from that, we then start kind of moving over here, and now we're, so-and-so got to do this at the lake, or so-and-so got to go and do this and this. Oh, how does that, and then you start, how does that make me feel? And all of a sudden now we're way over here, and now it's like, I've got to go do all these things. And now I feel a void that I need to fill. And so we just kind of fall down that slippery slope sometimes. And so I want to ask, why and how is this insulting to the Lord?
It's simple. The Bible tells you, you can have no other God before me.
Yep.
God's a jealous God. If you're insulting him, instead of going to him, you're going to somebody else or something else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no other gods before me. He's a jealous God, and he, I think the last thing you said was really intriguing.
I think one thing we're missing here also is that these people have been slaves,
Mm-hmm.
basically, for 400 years.
Yeah.
Somebody was told them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, continuously. Making bricks. Bushes in them.
Mm-hmm.
Salt, grain, whatever. They're brick makers.
Mm-hmm.
But over that period of time to Jesus and still afterwards, God still referred to these same people as stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart. That's the chief description that God gives them.
Mm-hmm.
So, is this a group of people, did this all just occur because of their past? Or is this continually the actual thinking pattern that this group had, or this nation had? Because, they stayed with, once they started with the old law, they're still with it. They hadn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
Still are rejecting Jesus Christ.
I remember Stephen saying in Acts chapter 7, he calls them stiff-necked people, but yeah, stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart. I don't fully know if it's solely always because of their past or their continual, I guess, rejection of Yahweh. But it may be a mix of both at different times. But again, why is it insulting?
Well, I think one of the ones got his feet because they had raised, for 1 year they were slaves out of work and all that stuff. Well, they're probably in the blood to do that.
Yeah. I'm still looking, though, why is it?
In this particular instance, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons, what we do with adultery is insulting to God, but on this one, he had a plan. He had a plan from the beginning with Abraham and telling him, and them to, just go through what they just did, crossing the Red Sea, all the miracles and everything he's provided for them, and just for a little bit of patience that didn't happen. Like I said, 40 days that Moses was going to,
Mm-hmm.
and for just that short of a time, then for them to do this, yes, it's like, look what I'm doing it for you freely, and it's the same way, I know you're going to get to it later, but how do we insult God every day by putting things before Him? I mean, it's just that simple. We're not appreciative of what has been done for us.
Yeah, we're not always appreciative, and I will get to it. but I mean, beloved, aren't they not? For sake of time, I'm going to have to answer it a little bit, but then move on. Are they not exchanging the Creator for the creation? They are. And they're also claiming that this created thing that has been formed with their own gold, their piercings, I mean, that's what brought them up out of the land of Egypt. And so you're not only making that exchange, you're not only making that transaction, you're now giving credit to the thing that's doesn't even have a spirit. It's not even alive, right? There's something to that. That is, it's almost like you pay someone's way through college and then they give credit to the school or something. I don't know. It's just an really odd thing. It'd be insulting because you're discrediting God and you're elevating the carved image. Now, Kelly brought up something interesting. I want us to explain the difference between making God first in my life versus putting God at the center of my life. Is there a difference between the two? Which one should we?
If you put God the first thing, you can worship God, read your Bible, whatever. Okay, now I can go do the rest of my day. But if he's at the center of your life, he's in every aspect, everything you do should be purposeful. How God would want me to do it, and everything that God has planned for me versus my plans.
Yes. So Kathy said, if God's first in my life, so to speak, which I understand when people put that in their social media bios, I understand what they mean. At the same time, though, when we really think about that, well, God's first in my life. He's the first thing I tend to in the morning, or he's the first person I go worship in my week. I mean, I worship him on the first day of the week. I take the Lord's Supper. I take that instead of breakfast. I mean, it's like he's first. Okay. But then after you leave worship, you can go and kind of serve all these other things and do all these other allegiances. And so he may be first, but he's not the focal point. And so it's like, but is God at the center of everything that I do? And so we say that, we need to put God first. We need to put God first. Really? Among many other gods? No. Because if God's the first one of many, he's no different than he's one drawer out of all the drawers and cabinets in my kitchen. But if he's at the center of my life, he dictates how far that circle goes. There is a difference there. God's first in my life, that means everything else after is just as important to me. But God comes first. Right? And so we've now labeled us as, we've taken on the label of Christianity, the label of faith, the label of disciple of Jesus, and yet we still we have all these other allegiances that just come right underneath them. And that's what's propping us up in our life, not him. And it's almost like he's become a bumper sticker. But he's not the one driving the engine forward. He's just another drawer in my kitchen of many drawers and cabinets that I can choose from as I try to do what I want to do. But if God's at the center of my life, then he's involved in everything. He's there in everything. And he's Lord over every facet of my existence.
I retract my statement.
Okay. Kelly retracts. Redact that. So, what are some common idols for us today?
You're right.
Sports stars, athletes,
Okay, athletes.
athletes, like Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, or somebody like that. Everybody wants to eat that hamburger that Michael Jordan eats, he's an idol.
Okay. Really great. Michael Jordan, really great basketball player. Sometimes we can put him on a pedestal. Okay. Money. Okay. Thinking that if I have more money and can have more money and can have more money, I can be more and more secure. And so my security may be tied to the number in my bank account. Hobbies. Okay. Politics. Yeah. We worship the elephant or the donkey more so than the lamb. Yeah. Say that again. Cows. Yeah, I know what sound they make. It's more of a murr. Yeah, they don't butcher them at all. I just thought you were calling out Jason Meyer. I was like, well, I mean, I
It didn't cross my mind, but
when we dismiss, we all need to walk up to him and just go, "Murr." Yeah, that'd be really funny. Anything else that common idols today? Cell phones? Yeah. Cell phones can be used for good, but oftentimes they're used for self.
I mean, everything in our lives we can make an idol.
Yes.
Everything we put first before God,
Okay. Anything that we put first.
like you said, the center.
Yeah. It's more central than common idols you think about. We have the sports, entertainment, comfort, social media. These are two things that will really hit us. Sometimes we idolize people's opinions more than what pleases God. And sometimes we mix those up. We have, sometimes our idols, as great as it is that you want to be a great parent and that I want to be a great parent someday, and a spouse, we sometimes idolize our spouse or we idolize our kids. And so it's just interesting. Now, I want to ask, I'm not necessarily looking for you to answer this, but I want to ask the question, is God really against all these things? Are they really just bad things in and of themselves?
Same thing about it is God must come first. God don't mind if you watch a little TV or something like that, but He wants to come first, There's nothing sinful about entertainment as long as it's not vulgar.
Okay. There's something valuable about spending time with your loved ones when you're watching the big game, when you're watching Arkansas lose to LSU. There's something significant about that. But when you're also on the team, you're competing you're trying to be a teammate, and you're competing to win the trophy at the end, and you're all trying to move together, and your kids can learn a bunch of teamwork out there on the ball field that they can't always learn here in church. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. But there are valuable things that take place outside of these four walls, and there's valuable things to social media. There's valuable things to our kids' lives and to our children and all that, or to the young people in church. And everyone has a right to their own opinion. At the same time, is God against all these things? No, not in and of themselves. He just simply won't compete with them. Do you hear me, church? He will not compete with them. God isn't trying to be the first little g God among all the other little g gods. God will not compete with these things because He wants to be at the center of everything. How often we try to compete to win something, and how we're competing to, have the nicer thing, or do this, or to expand this, and to grow this, or to build this, or to just kind of become this. And it's just interesting that God's not going to compete with any of it. Because if we really believe in the practice of immersion, I mean, there's a reason why God calls us not to sprinkle in baptism, where we're called to immerse ourselves into Jesus. It's because our entire body goes under that water, and when our entire body comes up out of that water, we're a completely new creature in Christ. This is what it means to live an immersed life post-baptism, as we try to continue to put all these things to death, and we continue to put these idols to rest. Because God's not going to compete with them. There's one who's worthy of all of our worship. Who's worthy of all of our worship. Not sprinkled over here and there, not icing on the cake, all of it. The entire substance of our being. His name is Jesus, and I know we have a few minutes. While we exchanged His innocent life. Do you remember that exchange that happened within the last 24 hours of His life? The crowd was chanting, "Crucify Him, crucify Him. We want Barabbas. We want the convicted murderer, the insurrectionist. We want this guy." Pilate, you can take the innocent man. And so He continued to the cross as the creator of the universe, innocently dying a criminal's death so that all of creation could be reconciled back to the Creator. That's what Jesus did for you and for me. So now, don't just stop the behavior. We need to replace it with something else too. Here's some solutions for idolatry altogether. First one is to own it. What are we putting before the Lord? Some questions to consider is like, what do you feel like you need to have in order to be happy? Where do you consistently spend the most money? You know, I've been keeping up with my budget here and there, and June I just wrecked it. I didn't really keep up much with it, like with where my receipts were going and everything. But man, I spend a lot of money on snacks. What in the world? Like, I have food in the pantry. I don't know. What's the first thing you think about when you wake up? What would you have a challenging time letting go of for a whole month? What do you like to talk about? What do you gravitate towards when you start experiencing some heartache or a struggle or a trial or something? Where do we gravitate towards? I think if we're going to own it, those are some really prevalent questions we need to ask ourselves is, I mean, really, what are we trying to, where are we escaping maybe for comfort? Second thing would be, you know, from where you are, work on your relationship with the Lord. Maybe the solution in our lives is not always to remove the object of idolatry, but instead to make sure that we're growing in our love for the Lord. Jesus does has some very clear and direct words. I mean, if your right eye causes you to sin, cut it off, or tear it out, or your right hand, cut it off and throw it away. It's better that you lose this than you lose your relationship with the Lord. At the same time, sometimes it's not always cutting it out so much as it is refocusing your devotion and love. Changing our focus of worship back onto Jesus at the center of our life. Kind of like what the Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 12. Let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and instead let's pick the baton back up and run the race of endurance, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. And so when Jesus is our greatest pleasure, our greatest joy, and he's at the center, we won't go looking really anywhere else to find something else. We might need to embrace accountability with this, because idolatry is a lot like adultery. We let little gods. We've made a covenant with capital G God, and that's parallel, similar to a marriage. But when we let all these little G gods into our life, it's like letting someone else in the bedroom on our spouse. And if we want to be healthy and consistent, we're going to need to reach out to people and maybe ask them to hold us accountable with things and set some boundaries in our life so that we don't go to places or become things that we don't want to be. And healthy boundaries are not a bad thing. They're not a negative thing. It's not a weakness. It's actually saying, I'm declaring my love and commitment to God by setting these boundaries in my life. Maybe make some tough choices. There are times when we just can't overcome it without cutting something out, and so we need to cut it out of our life. When idols have a grip on us, that's never a good thing. When we willingly give ourselves over to an idol, we may have to make a tough choice and cut it out altogether. And ultimately, it's important that we put God at the center. Make sure he's the one who's at center stage, not my life, not me. Not me, myself, and I, not this American idol, this figure in my life or whatever, and put God at the center. Because he's the one running this whole universe. He's the one running your life. He's the one that causes the sun to rise and to set. He's the one that keeps this whole world functioning, and we're just living in it. So let's put God at the center. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? It's 10:20, so we probably need to stop. So, all right, you're dismissed. Don't forget to moo at Jason Meyer.